Hi, good morning from Miami, and great to be with all of you this morning. I am getting ready to go and give a talk at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. It's a great institution, and I've supported it for many years. And now, of course, with all the interest in the microbiome, epigenetics, gene expression, gene modification, etc., nutrition is acquiring a very important role in both the prevention and treatment of chronic illness. So I'm looking forward to my participation at IIN. Today, because I see a lot of rumblings in the news about the ever controversial Deepak Chopra, I thought I'd share with you a little bit of my history with and relationship with the worlds of science, pseudoscience, skepticism, cynicism, scientism, and my interest in consciousness. Thank you for all your comments. So let's go over this history very quickly. I don't want to bore you, but I think given the rumblings in the blogosphere and the internet about yours truly, is this guy a bullshitter? Is this guy a scientist? Is this guy a pseudoscientist? Is this guy a charlatan? I thought I'd give you a little bit of history about my career, not that you can't find it elsewhere. So let me give you a little bit of history. I'll for now not talk about my childhood, but I was raised in India. My father was a cardiologist, trained in Britain, and a very famous cardiologist at that. He was one of the early people who discovered what is called mountain sickness during the Indo-Chinese War. While people were shooting each other and killing each other with bullets, he was up there in the mountains in Leh doing cardiac catheterization on soldiers who were getting high altitude pulmonary edema and pulmonary hypertension. So now let's go to fast forward. I went to medical school at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and I graduated in 1969, believe it or not. Came to the United States in July 1, 1970. Did my internship at Muhlenberg Hospital in New Jersey, and then went on to study internal medicine and endocrinology, and then neuroendocrinology in Boston. It was during those years, as a fellow in endocrinology and neuroendocrinology, that I became fascinated with the molecules of emotion. The molecules of emotion: serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, opiates, the opioid receptor, etc. And I began to realize that there was a relationship between what happens in consciousness, you might say the mind also, in the mental and emotional world, between what happens there and what happens in our biology. And soon, of course, there were major discoveries that showed that these neuropeptides were not only in the brain, they were part of the immune system. The gut microbiome produces more serotonin than your brain, etc. So over the years, mind-body medicine took off. as a legitimate area of inquiry, and I began to realize that in fact, at a deeper level, mind and body are the same thing. That we should be using body-mind as a single phrase, and just like people use mass energy and space-time and wave particle, we should be thinking of body-mind as the same entity. And so my career moved from neuroendocrinology to what in the beginning was mind-body medicine, and later became what we today call integrative medicine. I personally don't like the word alternative medicine, because it implies that there is something alternative to standard medical care. I don't believe in that. I believe in the integration of anything that works. So mechanistic science works very well. Mechanistic medicine works very well for acute illnesses like pneumonia or even injury. But by and large, for chronic illness, we need a more integrative approach that includes lifestyle, includes things like good sleep, stress management, meditation, yoga, exercise, breathing techniques, and the role of emotions in regulating our biology. There's a very clear kind of pathway to explain how emotions regulate our biology, so that when you have healthy emotions like love, compassion, joy, equanimity, your biology moves in the direction of homeostasis. And when you have unhealthy emotions like hostility, fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, depression, anger, resentments, grievances, then your body moves into in the direction of inflammation, which is the background in many chronic illnesses. So this was my history, moving from internal medicine, neuroendocrinology, integrative medicine, first mind-body medicine, integrative medicine, and now for me, the exploration of consciousness. So this is a history of about since 1970 to 2018. It's a long history, almost 50 years of my career in the medical profession. And so over the years, of course, I've been accused of everything from being a charlatan to a pseudoscientist. I've been accused by a lot of mainstream scientists of exploiting science to further my beliefs and practices, and on and on. The controversy continues, although more and more people are beginning to understand the role of subjective experience in how it influences our biology. So my career has moved from internal medicine, endocrinology, neuroendocrinology, to mind-body medicine, to integrative medicine, and now the exploration of consciousness and what is fundamental reality. But as usual in any career, there are ups and downs, and there's controversy, which I actually don't mind, because controversy helps expand our conversation. So I just want to make a few comments on what these terms mean. What does science mean, or pseudoscience mean, or what does skepticism imply, and what is scientism? Let's start with just science. I think everyone will agree that science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and the natural world through observation and experiment. One of the cardinal rules of science is the idea of falsifiability, popularized by the philosopher of science Karl Popper, who said if a theory is not falsifiable, which means it does not lend itself to validation or refutability, then it's not valid science. In fact, all of scientific history is the history of falsifiability of previous theories. Ptolemy's geocentric universe, and then the overthrow of that by Copernicus and Galileo as the heliocentric universe. And now, of course, we're looking at not one universes, but possibly 10 to the power of 500 universes in different dimensions of space-time, with 2 trillion possible galaxies, 700 sextillion possible stars, all according to current science, and maybe 100 billion habitable planets in our own Milky Way galaxy. Science has made a lot of progress. So the scientific method is based on very simple ideas: theory, observation, validation, or falsifiability. But of course, as I've said before, all theories are conceived in consciousness, all experiments are designed in consciousness, and all observations are made in consciousness. Anyway, science is the most successful adventure that human consciousness has taken. It's also the most dangerous, it's also the most promising, and it's also the most exciting. Here's for science and the scientific method. Okay, so what is then pseudoscience? Pseudoscience is a collection of beliefs or practices mistakenly regarded as being based on the scientific method. So once again, pseudoscience is a collection of beliefs or practices mistakenly regarded as being based on the scientific method. So when I used to justify meditation and yoga as being scientific practices, that's when this whole thing about me being a pseudoscientist became very popular. But of course, in Eastern wisdom traditions, both yoga and meditation are regarded as sciences. Both yoga and meditation are regarded as sciences. They are regarded as the science of self-awareness, which is not standard science. I have to tell you that standard science does not include self-awareness. But now, as over the years, because the scientific method has been so successful in exploring everything, then what happens is that yoga and meditation have lent themselves to basically scientific inquiry. We now know that meditation changes gene expression, for example. And this has been validated by many people, including our own studies with institutions like Harvard, Duke, Scripps, and many others, UCSD, UCSF. We've shown that meditation changes levels of telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls biological aging. We've also been able to show that meditation enhances the activity of genes that restore homeostasis and reduces the activity of genes that cause too much inflammation. So yoga and meditation, and yoga also, different yoga postures stimulate vagal tone, which influences the activity of the microbiome, influences heart rate variability, and both meditation and yoga increase neuroplasticity in that they help neurogenesis and what we call synaptogenesis. These activities, meditation and yoga, enhance what we might call integration of the three brains, the reptilian brain or the midbrain, the emotional brain, and the intellectual brain. So I believe that the study of yoga and meditation and practices that include mindful awareness of sensory experience, mindful awareness of body, mindful awareness of mental space, mindful awareness of the web of relationship, and ultimately awareness of awareness, all actually lend themselves to scientific study, and therefore would not fall under the rubric of pseudoscience. What about this other term that has become relatively popular, although not too popular among scientists? It's the word scientism. Scientism refers to an excessive belief in the power of scientific knowledge and techniques to explain just about everything. So if you understand, for example, evolution as described by Darwin, then everything can be explained as a struggle for survival. Everything, including our deepest yearnings to know the truth, our deepest yearnings to know ourself, including everything that we call imagination, intuition, introspection, imagination, and creativity can all be understood if you understand evolutionary biology. Scientism, therefore, is the excessive belief in the power of scientific knowledge to explain everything that humans do. The love of art, poetry, the love of music, dance, everything can be understood by the scientific method. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true, but we have now many apostles of scientism, such as Michael Shermer and many others, who believe that if something is not provable scientifically, it is invalid. Now, I think there are many scientists who will disagree with that. Many scientists who will say that science is purely a method of inquiry, a system of thought, just like poetry is an expression of thought as well. T.S. Eliot famously called it a raid on the inarticulate. But philosophy is a system of thought. In fact, philosophy was originally called natural sciences, and then of course it took on the scientific method, which has proved very successful. I'm speaking to you right now because of the validity of the scientific method that allowed us to create the technology that allows me to speak to you right now. I flew in from Los Angeles to Miami on a jet plane because of the scientific method that discovered the principles of aerodynamics. So science is a great adventure, but it is one particular system of thought. And science doesn't actually right now address systems of thought like epistemology or even ontology. What is the fundamental nature of existence? What are the limits of human knowing? and is everything that we feel and know at the level of emotions and intuition and gut feelings. Is this all subject to scientific scrutiny? Perhaps it is. But many scientists do recognize that science is a modeling of experience and knowing, and that science creates useful constructs that can be explored for creating technology. But science does not usually address the meaning of existence, or even what is existence and how we become aware of existence. So that's a brief difference between strict scientific methodology and scientism. Scientism is a belief system, just like skepticism or atheism or theism or religion or theology are all belief systems. Okay, what about skeptics? I've had to deal with skeptics all my life. So a good definition of a skeptic is a person inclined to question almost all accepted opinions. I think actually the history of science is also the history of skepticism. It's a very healthy, it's very healthy to be a skeptic, to question all accepted opinions. Depending, of course, on who you are, then you can be judged by skeptics as either a charlatan or a fraud or a pseudoscientist. But many people don't really know the difference between skepticism and cynicism. So cynicism is not the same as skepticism. Cynics are people who sincerely believe that the actions of others are motivated by self-interest rather than action for honorable or unselfish purposes. So cynics by nature are mistrusting people. Skeptics by nature are questioning people. And I, of course, believe in radical skepticism, which means question everything, including the construct, the mental construct that we call physical matter. So this leads me into where I am in my personal life right now. And where am I in my personal life right now is understanding, is trying to understand consciousness is as the fundamental reality that conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes the experience of the physical universe. Once again, where I am right now is in exploring the notion that consciousness is the fundamental reality that conceives, governs, constructs, and becomes the experience of that which we call the physical world. And as you know, I've been sharing my ideas about human constructs with you for some time. Anything that we can name or describe in language or symbolically is a human construct for a mode of knowing and experience in consciousness. If I asked you what is this, you'd say it's a cup. That's a human construct for a shape and a color and a form and a sensation, a taste and a smell, and the interpretation of that is the human interpretation of that is this is a cup. So human civilization is built on constructs in consciousness for modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. In fact, we live now in what can be only called a cognitive universe. Cognitive universe, which means all our reality is filtered through human constructs for modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. So let me show you, for example, the view from my window right now. I guess it's not coming clearly. So that's the view from my window right now that I am trying to show you. And here it is, the view from my window in Miami. So all those buildings, all those cars, all that highway, everything that I am showing you right now through my camera is not only a human construct, it's a human creation. But then I look at the seascape out there and look at the sky out there, and is that a human creation? Is that a human construct? And I think the best way to try to understand is no, it's not a human creation, but it is a human construct. This thing which we call a hand is not a human creation, but it is a human construct. What is this that I call a hand, or this that I call a face? This is an experience. And where is that experience happening? It's happening in a species-specific mode of consciousness, a knowing that is human. Okay, what does this look like to an insect with multiple eyes, or a bat that navigates through the experience of ultrasound, or any other species, living species, that are literally species of consciousness whose world is totally unknown to us. So the word hand, the word physical body, the word matter is a human construct for a unique mode of knowing and experience in a species that we call Homo sapiens. We means human species, call ourselves Homo sapiens, the wise ones. Arrogant, but nevertheless, everything that we experience is either a human creation or a human construct. And that's important to recognize. Are constructs useful? Of course they're useful, because what we do is we reify, R-E-I-F-Y, reify modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness, which are simply intangible, ephemeral, transient, momentary, ungraspable sensations. When I say sensations, I mean sense perceptions of all kinds, including sound, sensation in the body, sensation that we call touch, sensation that we call color, form, any perception. We reify these ungraspable, moving, intangible experiences in consciousness and create the notion of an objective world. That's very useful, by the way. Once we create the notion of an objective, observer-independent world, what we are basically seeking is a subjective agreement on our intersubjective human reality. And by objectifying experience, by reifying sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and creating the notion of an objective reality, we are able to study it, we are able to measure it, we are able to quantify it, we are able to agree on the quantifiable constructs that we have come up with as a result of using language and symbols, including mathematical symbols. Mathematical symbols are the most interesting because today mathematics includes multiple ideas of infinity. So, matter itself becomes elusive to the scientific method. What is matter? Well, it's something that has mass and occupies space. What's it made up of? Well, it's made up of molecules. What are the molecules made up of? Well, they're made up of atoms. What are the atoms made up of? They are made of subatomic particles that are moving at lightning speeds around huge empty spaces. And what are those subatomic particles ultimately made up of? Well, they are wave functions in mathematical space, in Hilbert space. See, as we go down the rabbit hole of matter, we end up with something that is a concept, a wave function in mathematical space. So matter itself is a human construct. Matter itself is a human construct for modes of knowing. Useful? Yes, very useful. But a useful fiction that helps us to navigate experience. So if I say to you, tomorrow I'll meet you at the corner of Broadway and 56th, then we'll go and have Caesar salad at Serafina, all those words are mental constructs for modes of knowing and experience. So we as human beings can navigate our experience and actually construct our collective human reality. That's why I said science is an amazing adventure. Dangerous, promising, exciting. But science is not a methodology to explore the truth. Science is, in fact, a map for our quest for knowing ultimate, absolute truth. Ultimate, absolute truth, which is that by which everything is known. So consciousness is that one thing by knowing which everything else is known. Relative. But consciousness is absolute. Consciousness is all modes of knowing, all knowers, and all phenomena known. All seers, all seeing, and all scenery. All observers, all modes of observation, all objects observed. In fact, it is consciousness that modifies itself as all experience that includes knower, knowing, and known. This is part of a lot of great wisdom traditions. But when taken out of context, it can be easily judged as pseudoscience. And what has recently been, what I have been recently charged with, which is pseudo-profound bullshit. In fact, there are websites that call themselves the Wisdom of Chopra that ask you to find the difference between what I say and what is generated by a random quote generator machine. And many people fail the test because many things that are put on Twitter and elsewhere are basically short sentences. Some of them actually are translations of sutras from Sanskrit, and these are short sentences that in the tradition of the Vedanta are called sutras, short little aphorisms that have the ability to give you an epiphany or an insight and radically shift your perspective. And so when these are posted, of course, and taken out of context, they can be easily called pseudo-profound bullshit. Now, it's very interesting that bullshit in the Western world is really a very derogatory term. In India, of course, we use cow shit for many things, including generating fuel, and has been used for decoration and art and graphics, and even producing a rudimentary form of air conditioning in the mud huts of India. So cow shit is holy. All shit is holy. And that is because shit is merely the recycling of stardust. You are made of that. I am made of that. Shit is the recycling of stardust. You and I are stardust beings with self-awareness. Okay, so how do we move forward? Very slowly. We have to move forward by slowly disengaging ourselves from the conditioned mind. I would say all philosophy, all science, all theology, all religion, all ideas about space, time, matter, everything that we use words for, including fundamental particles like gluons and quarks and force fields. These are symbolic expressions for modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. They are maps for navigating the territory. But the territory and the map are two different things. The map is very useful for exploring a certain territory. A scientific map, a theological map, a philosophical map. But ultimately, all that maps do is give us an anchor to hold on to rationally explain our experience. The maps are not the territory, though. Just like the menu in a restaurant is not the meal. You can't eat the menu, but looking at the menu can give you an experience too, somehow. The experience of the longing for that food, or the urge to eat, or even a salivary response. That's why looking at symbols can produce an experience. You read a book and it can give you an experience, right? You read a book of fiction, it can give you emotional experiences. You start to root for the hero and you want the villain to lose, etc. And yet all that book is symbolic. All that book is a symbolic representation of the author's experience that you relate to. Similarly, you can stimulate the brain and you can produce an experience, because the brain records every experience. Just like right now, this experience will be recorded on the internet through a link, and then every time you press the link, you can reproduce this experience. And so everything that we call matter, everything that we call reality, mind, brain, body, universe, is actually a symbolic representation of knowing and experience which happens in consciousness. Consciousness is the ultimate reality, the absolute truth. Consciousness is all experiences in all living beings, in all modes of experiences in all living beings. Humans reify these experiences into the human universe. You and I live in a cognitive universe that we have shaped together over the last few thousand years, when we discovered language and we discovered the symbolic representation of experience. But then we made a mistake. We confused the symbol with the reality. As long as we recognize this difference, then there is hope for us. Hope for us in that we can continue to explore experience through artificial intelligence, through augmented reality, through virtual reality, if we understand that the experience we're having right now, the so-called physical world, is a virtual reality as well, filtered through human constructs, whether those constructs are scientific constructs or philosophical constructs or other constructs. This is what it means to be in the world and not of it, to understand both immanence and transcendence. So to all my friends, all of you, those who agree and those who disagree, those who think that I am doing my best to translate insights from wisdom traditions in contemporary language, and those who think that I'm a purveyor of pseudo-profound bullshit, thank you to all. Thank you to all of you for expanding this conversation.